Hello and welcome to this edition of Wineskins. I'm Father Jim Korda. Wineskins is a program that features reflections on the lives of the saints and the sacred scriptures, along with a variety of issues and topics, all from a Catholic perspective. Wineskins is brought to you through the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our program today, I will interview Sister Regina Rogers on the 75th anniversary of the Diocese of Youngstown. We will also hear more information on the life and times of Blessed Miguel Augustine Pro. And today, as the Church celebrates the 33rd Sunday in Ordinary Time, we will get a deeper insight into those particular Sunday readings. That and more on Wineskins. Now we will speak about the Religious Retirement Appeal. With me now is Sister Mary McCormick, who is the Major Superior of the Ursuline Sisters of Youngstown. Sister Mary, it's a pleasure to have you on Wineskins.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
You know, this year, the Religious Retirement Appeal is almost 30 years old, and it has done some wonderful things for religious communities around the country. Let's talk primarily of what it has done for the Ursuline Sisters.
First of all, we have been so grateful to the Catholics here in Northeast Ohio and the Diocese of Youngstown, as well as Catholics around the country who have generously contributed to this collection for over 30 years. You know, our sisters for a long time were not even eligible for any retirement benefits at all, not even Social Security until around the 1970s. And even then, because the contributions were rather small, our return from those is also rather small. We probably get about half of what an average Social Security payment would be. Consequently, you know, we always are trying to struggle to keep up with what it costs to take care of one of our retired sisters, and the contributions from this collection really supplement that. And supplement it for really basic things, you know, trying to make sure we have the provisions that we need, you know, food and all of the supplies we need at the Mother House, as well as medications, paying for the co-pays for doctors, all of those kinds of things. The monies that we get from this collection just help our operating budget every year.
You know, this is perhaps one of the most popular appeals and collections around the country annually. What makes it so popular?
For many Catholic Americans, their memories of Catholic school, their memories of healthcare, their memories of parish life in the 50s and 60s and 70s was certainly shaped by the sisters who were their teachers, their mentors, their friends, their colleagues, their coworkers. And when they started making this appeal, people said, you know, I remember how much they helped me. Life has changed a lot since then. And even if they were children in those days, now they've got some monies that they want to share with others, and they remember the sisters and the brothers and the priests who have helped them, and that's why I think the collection is so popular.
Let's talk about the religious who are retired. You know, in our vocation, let's say we really don't retire. We still work. There are still things that we do, whether it's even in prayer or giving our time or talent, whatever. But what are some of the things that the religious sisters of your community are involved with where they continue the charism of St. Angela?
Yeah, that's very true. When I look at the list of our sisters, and there are about 40 of us here in Youngstown, when I look at the list of our sisters and I say who's unable to do anything, it's a very small number. Every single one of our sisters really tries to do something. Prayer, of course, is the most constant and the one we do most often. But some of our sisters right at the Mother House, they volunteer at some of the other ministries we have at the Mother House. They volunteer at the preschool. They work down at our Ursuline Center as ministers of hospitality, welcoming people in, making sure the doors are open and closed. One of the big ministries that many of our sisters participate in is writing to prisoners. They have taken this on as a mission and a ministry, and now it's something that they can do, and they enjoy doing. That has become a ministry for them. We also have programs that work with other older citizens, you know, Silver Sneakers and pool programs, aerobic programs. Our sisters also work with those and volunteer to welcome those people, participate in the program with them. It's a new way of taking on friends and becoming part of the local culture.
What would you like to share with the folks that are with us primarily about the appeal? Why is it still important after 30 years? And what would you like to see them do for religious sisters?
It is still important. And as generous as the people in the United States have been, as generous as the people in the Diocese of Youngstown have been, there is still what they call an unfunded past service liability. And most of the religious communities in the United States still need those funds. So I just would count on the people in our listening group to continue to contribute what they can. We know finances change all the time. We ask them to be generous to this collection this year. It helps not only the communities that serve here in our diocese, but it helps the religious all over the country. So even if the religious they remember are somewhere else, their donations help them as well.
Sister Mary McCormick, pleasure to have you on Wineskins, and also to share what the Ursulines, who are a very important part of our diocese here, and also religious women and men who have served over the years and who continue to serve well into retirement. So we thank you for that, and we ask the Lord's blessing upon you and all religious men and women. And we ask the folks that are with us to be very generous in this year's appeal.
Thank you very much, Father Korda.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. Blessed Miguel Augustin Pro was a priest and martyr. To tell us more is Brother Aloysius Milella. He is from the Society of St. Paul in Canfield.
This Jesuit martyr gave his life for Christ during the persecution of the church in Mexico that began in 1910. He died before a firing squad in 1927, and in 1930, the cause for his beatification was introduced in Rome. Born in Guadalupe, Mexico, Miguel entered the Jesuit novitiate in 1911. By 1914, the revolution had become so intense that all the young Jesuits dispersed. They traveled to Laredo, Texas, to California, and then by way of Nicaragua and Spain to Belgium. There, Miguel completed his studies and was ordained a priest in 1925. All those years he suffered from a severe stomach ailment, and his superiors ultimately sent him back to Mexico. Within a month after his arrival in Mexico City, the government banned all public worship, and for several years Father Pro ministered to the people incognito, but eventually an order was issued for his arrest, and he had to go into hiding. In November 1927, a bomb was thrown at the car of the president from an automobile that had previously belonged to a brother of Father Pro. As a result, the three Pro brothers were arrested and condemned to death. The youngest brother received a pardon at the last moment and was exiled to the United States. Father Pro faced the firing squad with arms outstretched, and at the last moment said in a clear voice, "Viva Cristo Rey," which translates, "Long live Christ the King." In the opening prayer of the Mass, we say that God the Father gave Father Pro the grace to seek ardently your greater glory and the salvation of your people. First of all, we note that the phrase "your greater glory" is a succinct expression of the motto of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, for the greater glory of God. Father Pro had previously offered his life to God for the Mexican people, and by his martyrdom, he glorified God. The blood of the martyrs is precious in the sight of God. The thousands of people that passed by the casket of the martyr were well aware that he had given his life for them. The president at the time had forbidden any public funeral, but the people defied his order. When one of Father Pro's sisters was overcome with emotion at the wake and began to weep hysterically, her father said to her, "Is that the way you act in the presence of a saint?" He well understood the words of Christ. Greater love than this no man has, but to lay down his life. The death of a martyr for Christ is always relevant because in every age there are persecutions of the Church. The lesson we learn from the selfless dedication of Father Pro to his priestly ministry in the midst of great personal danger is expressed in the petition of the opening prayer. May we serve you and glorify you by performing our daily duties with fidelity and joy. The entire opening prayer reads, God our Father, you gave your servant Miguel Agustin Pro the grace to seek ardently your greater glory and the salvation of your people. Grant that through his intercession and following his example, we may serve you and glorify you by performing our daily duties with fidelity and joy and effectively helping our neighbor. For Wineskins, this is Brother Aloysius Milella.
Talking with Sister Regina Rogers of the Ursuline Sisters. I think what I'd like us to do now, Sister Regina, is to have you recollect on some of the people, some of the personalities that you were affiliated with or that you could remember that were significant movers and shakers in this diocese that really were significant not only for you personally, but for us as the church.
Certainly I can go back to my early days when I realized that my first love in teaching was theology. And people like Father Phil Conley down at the diocese, Sister Mary Ann Coase in the diocesan library were certainly instrumental in helping me develop that sense of religious education, of theology. Was fortunate enough to work with Father Van Glerick for years, who had a vision of church and school that was very significant to me. I've worked with Ursuline sisters all along who have contributed to my growth personally. Sister Nancy Dawson, Sister Darla Jean would be people that aided in my growth. And I've been very fortunate to work with lay people. Pat Fleming, the former principal of Ursuline High School, Linda Miller, who really have captured the spirit of St. Angela, the essence of Catholicism in their work. So they've been important people in my life.
Now, in the presentation that you're giving to the people of the Diocese of Youngstown in celebration of the anniversary, what exactly will that be all about? And why is it important for us to lift up religious life in this day and age?
My plan is in the talks to start out giving a history. How did religious life come to be as we knew it before Vatican II? What happened during Vatican II? And how is religious life lived out today? Certainly with the decline of religious, many people are not familiar with nuns anymore. They haven't had the experience of working with. I think, again, like you said, in the past, many of us got to know the nuns through the schools. Well, the nuns aren't in the schools nearly like they used to be, so how do we get to know nuns? And why is religious life a worthy endeavor to think about for young women today, or priesthood, brotherhood? Why should people be thinking about that? I'd like to talk about that a little bit. I'd like to listen to what people are saying, to ask people, what do they see as the needs of the times? Where should sisters be? Because I have to say, my talk is really geared toward women religious. Yeah, I think it would be interesting to have somebody talk about men religious and their impact and their history, but I can only speak from the experience that I know best, and that's with women religious. But that's what I'd like to do, and then, listen to them. We've been very fortunate. The Ursulines have been very fortunate because we have had such support in the Diocese of Youngstown from the people that we've worked with, that we've ministered to. So I'd like to recognize, that in terms of the lay people today and how supportive they have always been and how necessary that has been for us to continue to do what we do.
It's interesting because we refer to the Ursulines as the Ursuline Sisters of Youngstown,
right? Because
you are a diocesan order, correct? Explain how that.
Well, we're really a pontifical order. We're a pontifical order. The Ursulines are all over the world. However, the governance of the Ursulines in the Youngstown area is done by the Ursulines of Youngstown. The same is true for the Cleveland Ursulines or the Toledo Ursulines. We're all united under St. Angela, but our governance is in that specific locale. That's the difference.
The one word you had mentioned in the presentations that you're going to talk about and present, it was Vatican II. We know that with Vatican II, many things really changed. And we believe, most of us, for the good. Why, and change really is the only constant thing.
Right.
Things are always
Right.
changing. Why is it important for us to embrace the Vatican II, which is just a little over 50 years old, that's leading and directing and guiding us through the Spirit, and how will that continue to guide us not only as a diocesan church, but as women religious?
Vatican II called religious women go back and look at their roots and really strip away what wasn't necessary, what wasn't vital to their lives, and look at the real motivation for our lives. So we went back and studied our founders. We went back and looked at our original charisms. And from there, that was the springboard for a lot of the changes that we made. We needed to, look at our lives and update them because they really had been frozen from around the Council of Trent. And so for us, it gave us a chance to say, is this what we should be doing? And I think it's true not just for religious, but it would be the same that married couples need to say, let's look at our life together. Are we doing what we initially wanted to be doing? And so the Ursulines, as responding to Vatican II, we did. We looked at all of the aspects of our lives in community, our life in ministry, our prayer life. That all was open to reflection, prayer, reflection, dialogue. We went back to the writings of St. Angela. So it was a time that was important to us to say that we are doing what St. Angela asked her daughters to do. And all religious communities took that charge very seriously. And I think you can see some chose to do things differently than other religious communities. But I think one of the things that people always talk about is that's when we did away with the habits. But the habits weren't what made us who we were, and we needed to. In fact, St. Angela's daughters did not wear a habit, so we decided that we needed to look at the purpose, the meaning, and again, some communities chose to keep the habit, some chose to modify the habit, some chose to do away with the habit altogether. But it depended upon the community. We looked at our prayer styles again because we were trying to live a monastic prayer schedule and yet be active at the same time. So, you can see the difficulty that would cause. So if prayers were at 5 o'clock, but you were a DRE and had meetings, it presented a problem. So we had to adjust. It wasn't easy for us. I can honestly say that as we prayed, as we talked together, the decisions that we made were the best decisions that we could make under the guidance of the Spirit at the time.
Well, Sister Regina Rogers, thank you for spending this time with us and for your work with the anniversary year in the presentations. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you. For more pertinent information and to listen to Wineskins, visit www.doy.org, the website of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
They say America is a land of opportunity.
But for some of us, it's not so easy.
Today, 1 out of every 6 children in America lives in poverty.
Where every day is hard.
And there's never enough.
But we don't want a handout. We want a way out.
This is America.
Together, we can do so much.
Will you help?
Nearly 13 million children live in poverty. Make a difference. Go to povertyusa.org and get involved. A message from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development.
Church World Service believes that being self-reliant is a joy everyone should share. So around the block or around the world, share the joy.
Our song today is from the CD called Worship Magnify. It is by Living Praise.
Lord Jesus, we enthrone
And now I'll give my reflections on the readings for the 33rd Sunday in Ordinary Time. Do you ever experience a helplessness in trying to change things that need to be changed? It could be a change within ourselves that has been difficult to make. Maybe we're too lazy, or we gossip too much, or drink too much. Let's face it, there are many changes that each of us can make within ourselves that would make us healthier people. It could be changes in the people around us, on the job, at school, in the world. In spite of our feeling of helplessness in bringing about necessary changes, we live in a rapidly changing world. Oftentimes, we look at change as our enemy instead of our friend. Our tendency is to get comfortable with the things around us and stay that way. Jesus was never a defender of the status quo. He was the most disturbing and challenging person that ever walked the earth. You and I have no right to call ourselves his followers if we close our eyes to that which needs to change. Homelessness, poverty, racism, oppression, discrimination. The worst thing that can happen within ourselves and our church is to lose Jesus' spirit of revolution and accept things the way they are. There is a true story called The Tow Woman from John Kavanaugh's book, Faces of Poverty, Faces of Christ. It's about a woman, recently widowed, who was giving in to bouts of depression. She rarely went out anymore and just sat around on her front porch. One day she read in the parish bulletin that a family was looking for someone to stay with their mother 3 nights a week. It seemed that the woman rarely slept. She had Lou Gehrig's disease and was unable to move anything of her frail body except one toe. The widow inquirer then backed off. It seemed that it was a situation that she didn't feel she could handle. She would have to care for her as if she were a little baby, and would even have to feed her through a tube in her stomach. Well, the widow's children encouraged her to just give it a try for even 1 week. Then, if it turned out to be too much or too difficult, she could leave. The tow woman and her family were something to think about. The family had taught her to communicate with them by the movement of her toe, the only part of her body that she could move. They would ask if the first letter of the word was from A to E, and if it were, they would say A, B, C, and if she moved her toe, they would know the first letter of the word, and so on. The widow was touched by the family's love for her, but more by the woman's love for them, especially her husband. After a few months, the widow remarked how much she wished she could be like the tow woman. She said that she had such a smile, and she would appreciate even the littlest thing. That she would hope to be like her. Imagine that, a woman paralyzed and unable to taste the food that nourished her, a woman who represented the powerlessness and dependency that we all endlessly fear was not enough. One June night, after all those nights of conversation, praying, and laughing, the tow woman spelled out, "I love you." Months later, near the vigil of her death, the woman who was paralyzed spelled out to the widow who helped her, "It has been a great privilege to know," but the widow who helped said no. It was quite the opposite, and she meant it. For who was paralyzed and then empowered to walk with joy and grace? Who was imprisoned and then made free? Who was blind and finally saw, yes, that if the only thing you can do in the world is move your toe, you can change the human heart and change the world. For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. At the end of this liturgical year, we bring to mind the end of time. Though we cannot know the day or the hour, our trust and hope is in the Lord. We remember that God's elect will be gathered from the ends of the earth. May these promises allow us to face the future with hope. Wineskins is a production of CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. It is brought to you by the Annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. I'm your host, Father Jim Korda, wishing you a beautiful week. And we of CTNY would like to extend our blessings and prayers to you and your families as you gather to celebrate Thanksgiving.
What have you done for your marriage today?
I gave my wife a hug this morning. I told her I love her.
I did her hair this morning. I think it looks pretty good.
I cooked my husband's favorite breakfast.
I bought her an orchid.
What have I done for my marriage today? I sent my husband a love email.
I read the newspaper to my wife, and it cracked her up. But she's still laughing.
What have you done for your marriage today? Make a change for the better. Need help? Go to foryourmarriage.org, a message from the Catholic Church.
They say America is the land of opportunity, but for some, life isn't so easy. Right now in America, 1 in 6 children lives below the poverty line. That's nearly 13 million children of all races, all across our country. Where do you draw the line and get involved? You can make a difference in more ways than you think. Go to povertyusa.org today, because 1 in 6 children in poverty is one too many. A message from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development.